Welcome back. It seems like you've been really diving into the world of film and television lately. And you sent over this really interesting collection of articles from Further and Better's TV, Film and Media Industry, International News Roundup. We're talking about like
lots to talk about.
Caesar nominations and Sundance buzz, and even a David Lynch tribute.
Yeah, it's a lot happening right now.
It feels like a lot's happening. So are you ready to kind of take a deep dive with me into all of this?
I am.
And maybe uncover some of the big trends or any surprises we might have missed, and ultimately what you should be keeping an eye on in the coming months?
I think you're going to find some of these shifts are fascinating.
I have a feeling. All right, well, let's start with something glamorous. The César Awards in France. The Count of Monte Cristo is leading with 14 nominations.
Wow.
Beating Hearts and Emilia Pérez are also in the running. But 14, that's got to be some kind of a record.
It's more than just buzz. It's like award shows are a snapshot of what an industry values at a particular moment.
Right.
So this many nominations for The Count of Monte Cristo could say something about a renewed interest in like historical epics, but probably with a modern sensibility woven in.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
It makes you think about what elements of the story really resonated to garner that much attention.
Totally.
Shifting gears a little bit, the NFTVF Creative Courage Award, which, by the way, is the Nordic TV Fund's prize for innovative storytelling.
Okay.
It went to a series called Dates in Real Life.
Now, this one is interesting. It's a Norwegian drama that explores online relationships, but it uses virtual reality. It's pushing the boundaries of how we experience stories, which is a trend I think we're seeing more and more of.
A VR dating drama? That's certainly not something you see every day.
Yeah.
And speaking of pushing boundaries, we got to talk about the legendary David Lynch, who sadly passed away recently but receives the WGA West's Laurel Award.
Right.
Kyle MacLachlan presenting the award was a really fitting touch.
Yeah.
I mean, given their history.
Lynch's work is like a powerful reminder that impactful art transcends time and trends. It'll continue to influence filmmakers for decades to come.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's move from awards to festivals. Sundance just wrapped up.
Okay.
While the market was maybe a bit slower this year, there was a body horror rom-com.
Really?
Called Together, starring Dave Franco and Alison Brie.
Wow.
And it caused a bidding war.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what's so fascinating here is that this really unexpected mashup of genres sparked such a reaction.
Right.
It seems like audiences are craving these fresh takes even on familiar themes.
Yeah.
So Together could indicate this hunger for something that truly subverts expectations.
I have to admit, I'm kind of intrigued by the concept. Little horror with my romance.
For sure.
But while Sundance is dead, Rotterdam is gearing up for its 54th festival. And looks like they're prioritizing diverse cinema, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But they're also facing some funding challenges.
That's unfortunately a common problem for independent festivals these days, but they're so vital for promoting voices and stories you might not otherwise see.
It's true.
They're incubators for the next generation of great films.
That's a really good point. All right, well, we've talked awards and festivals. Now let's look at some of the shifts happening behind the scenes in the industry itself.
Okay.
One trend I've noticed is the rise of digital labels, like ITV Studios' Zoo 55.
Oh, interesting.
They're taking iconic shows and reimagining them for platforms like YouTube and TikTok.
I mean, it's a smart way to adapt to how people, particularly younger audiences, are consuming media now.
Yeah.
It's not just putting an old episode online. It's thinking about what works on those specific platforms.
Right.
Crafting shorter, snappier content.
It makes you wonder what classics they'll adapt next.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of adaptation, France is dealing with some tension between traditional media and streaming. Their culture minister wants to renegotiate the windowing rules, which basically control how long a film has to be in theaters before it can go to a service like Netflix.
I see.
So you can imagine having to wait months to watch a movie on Netflix after you saw it in theaters.
Right.
That's windowing in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's definitely a global issue as streaming disrupts those older models.
Right.
Cinemas want to preserve the theatrical experience, while streaming platforms push for quicker access to content.
It's almost like waiting for the paperback version of a book after the hardcover comes out.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's movies.
Right.
A very high-stakes tug-of-war.
Exactly.
So on the one hand, we've got studios adapting to new platforms, and on the other, these regulations trying to hold on to older systems. It makes you wonder what the future of watching movies will even look like.
Right.
But for now, let's get to some of the projects in development that caught my eye. Are you ready for this? We've got a Balamory reboot, Alan Titchmarsh, going full on YouTube, and even a docuseries on the UK phone hacking scandal.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Balamory is pure nostalgia, bringing that colorful world to a new generation of kids. Makes you wonder if they'll keep the original characters or introduce new ones.
Reboots are a popular strategy.
Yeah.
They offer a familiar entry point, but can also add a new layer of meaning for today's audience.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love nostalgia?
It's true. And then we've got Alan Titchmarsh, the gardening guru, embracing YouTube.
Makes perfect sense. YouTube has become like a hub for learning and lifestyle content. So someone with his knowledge is bound to attract a huge following.
Right.
I can already see the How to Prune Your Roses video going viral.
That would be amazing.
Totally.
Switching gears entirely. There's a docuseries in the works about the UK phone hacking scandal with a cast that includes David Tennant, Robert Carlyle, and Toby Jones.
That's interesting. That scandal had such a huge impact, exposing a lot of questionable practices in the media.
Yeah.
It's ripe for a dramatic retelling, especially with that cast.
I agree. That one's going straight to my watch list.
Yeah.
And then there's Ascendancy of Steel, an anthology series, which means each episode tells a self-contained story about an AI uprising, and it's filming in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Which is exciting not just for the scenery,
of course,
but because it helps to develop the local film industry there.
That's a key point. Independent productions can have this ripple effect, boosting local economies and nurturing talent.
Right.
It becomes about more than just the film itself.
Absolutely. So we've covered quite a bit. Yeah. Awards, festivals, industry shifts, and some really cool projects. What's jumping out at you from all this?
I think what strikes me is just how dynamic the entertainment world is.
Yeah.
New technology, changing audience tastes, global events. It's constantly reacting and evolving, which means it's never boring.
You're telling me.
Yeah.
And that dynamism is evident in the next thing we need to dig into.
Yeah.
The people behind the scenes. Get ready for some major executive moves. Things are about to get really interesting.
Okay. So let's talk about those executive moves.
Yep.
You mentioned it really does feel like musical chairs at the top of some major companies.
It's true. And these aren't just like shuffles. Some of these have like big medications.
Right.
Over at Sony, Hiroki Totoki is stepping into the CEO role, and Lin Tao is becoming their first female CFO.
That's huge.
Yeah.
It's a historic moment for Sony and for the industry as a whole.
Yep.
Leadership positions have been, traditionally very male-dominated.
Yeah.
So this is a significant step towards, I think, better representation. It'll be interesting to see what kind of impact this has in the long run.
I'm really curious to see what direction they take the company in. And it's not just Sony. Rose Hughes is returning to BBC Studios to head up global format sales.
Wow.
Emily Knight got a promotion at AGC Unwritten.
Okay.
Melanie Welsh has joined Boat Rocker. And Eddie Evelyn Hall is making a move to Tuesday's Child.
Lots of change.
Lots of change happening at all levels.
Yeah, it's almost like a ripple effect, and it really highlights how interconnected the industry is. Keep an eye on these individuals. The decisions they make will shape the kinds of films and television shows we'll be watching in the future.
It makes you realize how much influence a few key people can have on the entire entertainment landscape.
Totally.
And speaking of influence, remember how we were talking about companies adapting to reach audiences on new platforms?
Right.
We're talking about ITV Studios Zoo 55, which is reimagining shows for YouTube and TikTok. Do you think that's going to become the norm?
I think it's definitely a sign of where things are headed. Yeah. It's not just about repackaging old content.
Right.
Studios need to think about how people are consuming media today. And that means understanding different platforms and tailoring content accordingly.
Right.
Shorter formats, engaging visuals, interactive elements.
Yeah.
These are all things that resonate with younger audiences who are used to, a fast-paced digital world.
It's really interesting to think about how something like TikTok, which started as a platform for dance videos, is now influencing the way major studios are creating content.
Exactly. And with that blurring of lines comes a whole new set of challenges and opportunities.
Yeah.
How do you create content that's both high quality and engaging for a platform that's known for its short attention spans?
Right.
How do you measure success in a world where views and likes are the currency?
Yeah.
These are questions I think the industry is still figuring out.
It's almost like a whole new language of storytelling is developing.
It is.
But as fascinating as those behind-the-scenes shifts are,
I
know what you're really waiting for.
Okay.
Let's get to some of the specific projects and deals that caught my eye.
Okay.
This one is pretty major. Neon is putting down $20 million for Together.
Whoa.
That horror rom-com we talked about earlier.
Wow, that's a significant investment, especially in a market that's been a bit cautious lately.
Yeah.
It definitely speaks to the buzz that film generated at Sundance. And it suggests that there's still a strong appetite for original, genre-bending content.
It seems like taking risks is paying off.
It is.
And it's not just about acquiring finished films. There's a lot of activity in like co-productions and international partnerships.
Right.
For example, MediaRes, the company behind the hit show Pachinko, is expanding into the Nordic region.
Interesting.
And they've already got a project in development based on John Ajvi Lindqvist's novel, Summer of 1985.
Now that's a project I'll be keeping an eye on.
Yeah.
Lindqvist is known for his dark, atmospheric stories that blend horror and coming-of-age themes.
Yeah, I mean, Let the Right One In was his work.
Exactly.
All
so
right.
I'm curious to see how MediaRes will adapt his style for the screen.
It's almost like they're taking a page from like those Scandinavian crime dramas.
Right.
So popular lately.
Totally.
There's something about that Nordic sensibility that really resonates with audiences.
Totally agree.
Speaking of global reach, Amazon just struck a multi-year deal to stream Lionsgate films on Prime Video.
Wow.
Yeah, so that means they'll have access to a whole library of popular franchises, including John Wick and Saw.
That's a huge win for Amazon in the streaming wars.
It is.
It gives them a significant advantage in terms of content and shows that they're really serious about competing with the likes of Netflix and Disney+.
Competition is fierce right now, which is ultimately good for us.
Right.
Because it means more choices.
Exactly.
And speaking of choices, Disney+ just made a big move in France.
Okay.
They negotiated to reduce their windowing period to just 9 months.
That's a significant shift, and it could have ripple effects throughout the industry. By shortening the time between a film's theatrical release and its availability on streaming, they're responding to the changing ways people consume movies. It also suggests they're pretty confident in their platform's ability to attract viewers even without the allure of exclusivity.
It's almost like they're acknowledging that the traditional model of releasing a film in theaters first and then waiting months before it's available on streaming is becoming outdated.
Yeah, for sure.
But with all these changes happening, do you think we're losing something by moving away from that shared experience of going to the cinema?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one that I think a lot of people are wrestling with. There's definitely something special about seeing a film on the big screen, surrounded by an audience. It's a communal experience that you just can't replicate at home.
It's almost like a ritual, especially for big blockbuster films.
Exactly.
But at the same time, there's something to be said for the convenience and accessibility of streaming.
Right.
You can watch what you want when you want.
Totally.
You don't have to worry about crowds or sold-out shows.
Exactly. And for people who live in areas without easy access to theaters, streaming has been a game changer. It's democratized entertainment in a way that we've never seen before.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
It's not about one being better than the other.
Right.
It's about recognizing the value of both.
Totally.
And ultimately, it's about giving audiences choices and letting them decide how they want to experience their entertainment.
Exactly.
But before we get too philosophical, one more thing I want to touch on. The human element behind all these industry shifts.
Yeah.
There are so many talented individuals working behind the scenes, shaping the stories we see on screen, ready to meet some of them.
Absolutely. Let's hear about the people who are bringing the magic to life.
So we've talked about, the trends and the companies and the deals.
Yeah.
But what about the people?
Right.
After all, it's their talent and vision that bring these stories to life.
It's easy to get caught up in the business side of things.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, entertainment is about human connection. It's about the creators who pour their hearts into their work and the audiences who connect with those stories on a personal level.
And speaking of creators venturing into new territories, remember we talked about Alan Titchmarsh launching his YouTube channel?
Yes, the gardening expert going digital.
Well, he's not the only one. Comedian Sabrina Breyer is developing a new TV series called That Friend with Awesomeness.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Comedians often have a knack for finding humor in everyday situations. So I'm always interested to see what they bring to television.
That Friend is supposed to be about those, awkward, relatable moments we all experience in friendships.
Oh, okay.
Sounds like it'll be hilarious and heartwarming.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Eddie Murphy is starring in Blue Falcon, an action comedy from Sony.
Eddie Murphy back in action. I have a feeling this one's going to be a hit.
Yeah.
He's just got that charisma, you know?
He's a legend.
Yeah.
And the premise sounds fun. A retired super spy forced back into action at his son's wedding.
Oh, wow.
I can already picture the comedic chaos. Speaking of action, Brandon Sklenar, who you might recognize from 1923,
okay,
is in talks to lead a modern Western called The Rescue.
Interesting.
I love Westerns.
Yeah.
There's something about those stories of resilience and survival against a harsh backdrop that just always gets me.
And Sklenar definitely has that, you know, rugged, stoic quality that fits the genre well.
Totally.
He's an actor to keep on your radar.
I'll be watching for that one. And from the rugged landscape of Westerns to a psychological thriller.
Okay.
Annette Bening is joining Anya Taylor-Joy.
Wow.
In a new Apple TV Plus project called Lucky.
Okay.
Based on a novel.
That's an interesting pairing.
It is.
Both incredibly talented actresses, but with very different styles.
It makes you curious about the story and how their performances will kind of like play off each other.
Exactly.
Yeah, the fact that they've attracted such a high caliber cast.
Yeah.
Says something about the project. And speaking of intriguing projects, there's a documentary in the works called The Musician and the Whale.
Who?
That follows electro musician Roan as he creates music for, wait for it, a whale.
That's one of those projects that reminds you of the limitless possibilities of creativity.
Yeah.
Music has a way of transcending language and even species.
Right.
I'm really curious to see how they capture that connection on film.
It's a beautiful reminder that inspiration can come from the most unexpected places.
It can.
So we've celebrated the individuals behind the scenes.
Right.
We've explored the trends shaping the industry and unpacked some of the biggest deals and projects on the horizon. It feels like we've really taken a deep dive into the world of film and television today.
We've covered a lot of ground, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's a complex, ever-changing landscape, but that's what makes it so fascinating.
I completely agree. And as we kind of wrap things up, I want to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
You, the viewer, have more power than ever before.
Okay.
With so much content.
That's right.
Competing for your attention, the choices you make matter. What stories resonate with you? What voices do you want to support?
Right.
Because those choices shape the future of entertainment.
Yeah.
So keep exploring.
Keep discovering.
And keep those creative fires burning.